My name is Chris Merkle. I served as a sergeant in the United States Marine Corps for a long time. But before that, I grew up right outside of Oakland, California. I was born in San Francisco. Grew up in the 80s, 90s, right around the drug and gang time frame. So I had a lot of friends killed when I was growing up due to gang and drug violence. So I decided to get out of there, and I joined the Marine Corps to escape all that. I joined when I was 17, had to have a waiver from my mom, and left as soon as I could.
What medals, if any, are you personally most proud of?
The medal I think I'm most personally proud of is, and it's not to sound, I don't know, there's no way to talk about medals without sounding like verbose about yourself, but I think it would have to be, I have a Navy Commendation Medal for Valor, but it wasn't because of my action. It was, we were caught in ambush. I went to go try to recover the people who were caught in the middle. It was a bunch of reporters. They were all female reporters. So I ran into the middle of the ambush, almost got shot a bunch of times, served as a rally point for them, and then carried one of the reporters who collapsed, and she just could not handle being in the middle of the firefight, and so I was able to carry her out, ran with her on my shoulder for a couple hundred yards, and got her safety, and none of them were killed, so that was, I was happy that they all survived. So.
Mm-hmm.
At what time in your life did you decide to serve, and was there any event that particularly motivated you to enlist?
I think the event that most particularly motivated me to enlist was my parents and my family lineage of my grandfather was in World War II, my father was in Vietnam. They never specifically pushed me to join the military, but that was just kind of how I grew up. And then media, John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, and seeing all that stuff. I mean, you idolize that stuff as kids. And it was a form of escapism where I grew up. So I would escape into movies, escape into a play, and that was the only thing I knew. And violence was how you proved you're a man back then. So fortunately, that's what drove me to that profession. But it also saved my life. So it's the best decision I ever made.
So some of the countries in which you were stationed have been described by politicians as all around horrible place to be. In your experience, active war zones aside, is there any accuracy to these statements? Did you see any signs of life in those countries that are not usually shown in media?
So people who live in war zones are just like people here in Corona Del Mar. So there's perception. I live in Huntington Beach, so I have a perception of Corona Del Mar being a rich, fancy area and everybody has nice cars. But you guys obviously know the reality of where you live and what your house or apartment or your family looks like. It's not what's portrayed in the media. I was in Iraq, I was in Afghanistan, I was in different parts of Africa, Congo, the Philippines. The fighting was really intense. The people that were trying to kill me were not very happy with me being there. But they're also probably not happy with me because I was there trying to kill the other people. They get tired of being killed. But the people that are caught in the middle were just living their daily lives, making their bread, riding their bikes. They had shops open. I've never had a problem with people. I go back to I worked for the State Department after, and I love being in Afghanistan. And the poorest family, part of the Muslim culture, is to give you the best they have. So they would offer their rice, tea, and the people there are trying to live the best life they can, caught up in everything else. So it portrays it in a negative light, but they are affected. There's a lot of casualties of war on the side. You can't take your kids outside. There's a lot of toxins they're breathing in. The kids who are trying to get scrap metal, that luckily made the news, where they were going to the tanks and taking the scrap metal from our damage, but they're getting irradiated from the iridium. We use like a depleted uranium round to kill the tanks. So the kids that were doing the scrapping were starting to get cancer. So even the kids who aren't killed directly by combat, or the families who aren't directly affected, your roads are torn up, you have checkpoints everywhere, there's barbed wire everywhere, and that's not how you want to raise. Nobody wants to raise a kid there. So it's really hard on the locals there.
Did you spend much time off duty in local cities or towns? What were they like, and how were the locals towards you?
So wartime, I didn't get any out time. But in between war, so I was in the Marine Corps, we traveled on Navy ships, and so like a cop on a beat, we travel around the Pacific. So like one 6-month tour is San Diego, Hawaii, Guam, Philippines, Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan. And so we're basically just cruising around waiting. We're trained, ready for war if something breaks out. When you see the news, 1,500 Marines off the coast, that's what we did. So I went to a lot of little places, but I was usually pretty drunk, and I was there for 3-4 days of just like go and be a 19-year-old with $1,000 in your pocket to burn. So I didn't have good interactions with people back then. I was 19 years old and I was stupid and I was very drunk. But I mean, that's part of growing up, when you're very restricted and you have all this freedom and you're like this big American. So I was a big ugly American when I was 19, I'm sorry.
Having served towards the end of the Cold War, was there still a fear of direct conflict, especially nuclear conflict, or did things seem to be calming down? And was there relief when the Soviet Union fell?
So the Cold War, I honestly didn't really think about when I was growing up. I saw in the news. I am that old, so I was aware the Cold War was going on, and it was kind of cool to see the wall coming down. I thought that was cool, the freedom part. But the nuclear part didn't really bother me. I think you guys did more of it with North Korea and Trump and everything more recently, so you had a little bit of that scare because it's very imminent in the way recent things go on. Everything is so push button, so quick with news. I think I had more of a fear this time with North Korea than I did when I was growing up in the Cold War. So I think honestly you guys experienced it more, and you have more to lose because you're so young and you have a lot to live for. So to realize that, man, I could lose all this in an instant is pretty sad. So.
Were you ever homesick? Did you notice once you got back that you had a hard time adjusting from being so used to military life or life in a different country?
So initially I wasn't homesick. Like I said, I wanted to get out of there. I've only been home once, and one of my friends that played football was murdered that night. So haven't gone back to Oakland, so not a big tourist sell here for Oakland. But readjustment has to do more with transitioning out of the military. That's a whole different animal. It is a transition. The military is a big beast that trains you from being an individual. They take away your I pronoun, you become we, you become a collective. If somebody's messing up and say, we have an individual here, so we make individualization a bad thing. We shave your hair. For most people, that's your identity. I mean, you obviously have big, long, flowing locks. So they shave that away, they take away your name, you're all in the same uniform, you have no earthly possessions anymore, you're part of a unit. And you live or die or suffer as a unit. So you have this whole group mentality, and they reassign your values. Instead of your parents and your school or what college you're gonna go to, it's now this unit. First platoon is your life. If something happens in first platoon, you have to do it. And your mission is to live up to the history of the Marines that were in front of you. So they reshape your world and reshape your priorities. And you always have a support structure. It is like being in jail, unfortunately. It's 3 hots in a cot. Your whole job, my job as an infantryman, was to close with and destroy the enemy by means of fire maneuver, or to repel the enemy's assault by close combat. So I still remember that 20 plus years later. So that pretty much means kill the enemy until they get tired of being killed or trick them. So all I did was to train how to kill people for 20 years. I got out to be a police officer, did that in South Central LA, and that was pretty violent as well. So that transition is really hard, to going from I'm part of a we culture to I'm individual, trying to find an individual job, showing a resume that I carried a gun for 20 years. So it is a really hard adjustment. It depends on your branch of service, your job, the time that you're in, but it's not the same. Even peacetime, people who come in from, we make fun of the Coast Guard and the Air Force who aren't that militarized. There's still an adjustment period because you're coming in when you're 17, 18, your mind is still forming. You're still an adolescent till you're 25. Your brain doesn't stop forming till you're 25. So all those years, your brain, your ideas, your sense of values is changed to reflect this nationalist idea of we're fighting for this big cause bigger than ourselves. When you come back to school, regular life, trying to find a job, everything doesn't equate because it's not the big national picture. It comes down to just you trying to pay your bills and trying to raise a family. So it's really hard to adjust without that big supportive system behind you, and you have to fend for yourself. And you are kind of a helpless 22, 23, or 24-year-old, however you get out. You left at 17, and now you come out at 24 with no relative life experience of being here on the outside. It's like being in jail. You've missed 5 years of technology, 5 years of what's going on, and it's really, your resume doesn't match the current job market. So it is a really hard transition.
What weapon did you use? Did you think the enemy's weapons were more or less advanced than yours? And what kind of vehicles did you ride?
So America has the defense contractors who make sure we have the best weapons.
Yeah.
So weapon-wise, we were superior. Technically, they had the AK-47, which lasts through more. And if you're any kind of Walking Dead zombie survival fan, you know the AK-47s are a better weapon in the field. They're more of an effective killer than our weapons, so it's kind of a weird thing. But I carried mainly the battle rifle, the M16 or M4, which, I guess you guys would equate to school shootings. They were actually not as effective. We'd have to shoot people 4 or 5 times before they die, which for my job takes too long. I'd rather shoot somebody once and get it over with. So we switched to like an AK style bullet, a 7.62, a larger bullet. That was more effective at doing my job, which is killing people. So it sounds horrible, but that's my job. So we switched to that type of bullet. I was a machine gunner by trade, so I shot the M240 Golf, which is a higher rate of fire machine gun, medium machine gun, and a 50 caliber machine gun, which is a very big one, which goes through vehicles and houses and people very fast, and a grenade launcher, 40 microns. So like you see in the movies, they throw grenades, they don't really blow up like a nuclear bomb, but we had a machine gun that shot hundreds of grenades, 220 grenades per minute, so it's pretty awesome. So, and I rode in Humvees, helicopters, every vehicle made, small rubber boats we would attack. Actually did attacks out here in Newport Beach. We practiced assaulting Newport Beach at night in a rubber raid craft. To big Amtraks, I've been on warships, I've been in helicopters, and had a lot of fun.
Did you make any friends while you served, and if so, have you kept in contact with any of them?
I made a lot of friends while I served. In a kind of weird way, the peacetime way was more just being a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old with too much money to burn and lots of drinking and partying, and so I kind of formed those friendships. I went to war on the front end of my career and the back end of my career. The back end of my career, I really didn't make friends because I knew I was going to lose a lot of friends, so I didn't want to have that emotional connection. So everything was very surface, and I still carry that on my relationships with my classmates and my friends now. I'm very surface, so I haven't really kept in touch with most of them. Unbelievably, it was way before social media time, so we didn't have all the different social media platforms, so not really connecting. The ones I do connect with, unfortunately, they're just big mongoloid males and they don't really share emotions.
Do you have any interesting stories or notable experiences you'd like to share?
Basically, you guys are in high school, I won't share like 80% of mine. I think one of the more interesting ones, and you guys can probably look it up, is towards the beginning of the war, like for Marines, war is like the Super Bowl, like that's all we train for. But it's like if you had your Corona Del Mar high school football team here, they practice all the time, but they didn't even do a scrimmage against one person. And then suddenly they're like, you guys are going to the Super Bowl and you're gonna play the New England Patriots. And so it takes, you're training, but you never actually train, you actually never fight another foe. So when I went to Iraq, going into the invasion of Iraq, I was excited, as weird as that might sound for people who are not ready for war, but we were excited to go and test and do all these things we were trained to do, and we got thrown all these new weapons. And then we were in a lot of different ambushes and attacks over the first 10 weeks or 2 weeks. No real sleep, really delirious, and one of the nights we got ambushed. We're gonna go ambush somebody else, a counter ambush. We got lost in a sandstorm. My driver drove off a bridge. I got ejected out about 30 feet in the air, landed on my head, was knocked out. Woke up, was throwing up everywhere. Obviously I was concussed, started trying to save my Marines, get them out of the vehicle. And then next thing I know, I was being medevaced. And so I was pissed that I had to leave combat. So they were loading me up in a plane. I had a patient number. I was getting ready to fly off to Kuwait, which most people would think, that's great, you're getting out of the war. I was mad. And so my buddy cut me free. We climbed out of the stretcher. I could barely walk. I had fractured my neck and my spine. And we hid until the planes left. And we got on the road and we started hitchhiking back through Iraq, through an active war zone for about a week with no weapons. I had 2 grenades and a knife. And then we hitchhiked, we found like a military outpost that was like, the war was new, so they were just building places. We asked for guns, like we don't have guns, but we have grenades. So we got a whole pack of grenades, 48 grenades and 5 rocket launchers. So we start bargaining with other military units, we didn't give them to locals, but we're like, we'll give you a couple grenades. And everybody thinks everybody in the military fights, but it's only the grunts and special forces. So all these admin guys are driving around like, you guys have grenades? Like, I've never seen one. So I got to trade a couple grenades to get rides. And it took me a week, but I finally caught up to my unit. And I had a map, and I could find my way, but I had a map. I knew I was going to Iraq, so I looked online forever, and I finally found some random map from Barnes & Noble, and I had that in my pocket, and that's how I found I was tracking where we're going. I said, okay, 5 days at 30 kilometers an hour, this many, we should be here. And I found a pilot who landed me in there. And before that, we're going around, because our uniforms are torn up, I was still all bloody and everything, and like, where'd you guys come from? Like, why don't you just stay here? We have tunnels too. Like, no, you don't, I have to get back to my guys. And so when I landed, the grunts are notoriously we're a bunch of not nice people because we're just trained to kill, like the berserkers of the Vikings. So they're like, you guys came back, idiots. Like, you should just stay down there and eat ice cream. But my thing was, I wasn't gonna live out the war eating ice cream while my Marines were fighting or dying. So I cut back up. I was completely useless. I could barely move my neck. I could barely turn. I didn't really do any of the assaults. And when I left, I had a girlfriend, so I would throw my leg over her. So they always we always slept in twos, and we call it a ranger grave because in case you get attacked at night, if you die, they throw dirt over you, that's your grave, but it also keeps you safe from bombs. So they woke up me in the morning at 4 in the morning because they're waiting for attack. I'm like, Mark, wake up. Or Mojo is my call sign. They're like, what are you doing at dock? And we had our Navy corpsmen, and we always mess around, they're gay, the military is politically incorrect. So I had my leg thrown over my corpsman, another guy, and it was completely spooning him. because he was making me comfortable, and that's the best I ever slept. And so that was my weird story of the war. So I hitchhiked all through the war just to spoon my buddy. So.
That's a good story. What advice do you have for young people who want to enlist but don't know what they're getting into?
My advice for young people wanting to enlist would be to go to college first. I was an enlisted guy, which means I came in at 17. I had 7 to 10 years of war experience at the end of it, like fighting in and out, living in Afghanistan, Iraq for almost 10 years. A young officer coming out of college at 21 could be my boss and say, we're going to drive down this road every single day at 8 o'clock, right when all the bombs are there. And I would have to listen to what he says. So I had no say in what my superiors said. Career-wise, I could go from private to sergeant, sergeant major. As an officer, you have a lot more decision-making ability, a lot more autonomy. You have a lot more control of your life and your career, and you can go from a lieutenant to a general. It just gives you a lot more choices. Plus, that gives you that 4 years to kind of find out who you are. Nobody knows who they are. I still don't. I'm in grad school right now. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So if you're in 10th grade right now and you're watching this, you have no clue. You think you have a clue what you want to do, but hasn't really set in yet. Give yourself that opportunity to take that chance, go to college, and if you want to do it, the ROTC or the military will pay for it. If you still at the end of 4 years still decide you want to join the military, then you go in as an educated, informed person, and you can make decisions and affect lives, because you're going to be leading people, which is a big responsibility. But it's better to be the sheep herder than the sheep, because when you're just an enlisted guy, you're honestly a cannon fodder. You're just following directions. It gets mundane. You have zero career progression, zero life expectancy. It's not a good way to live, and it sounds ideal, get you out of there. But if you have the option to go to college, I would definitely, even I tell my kids to go to college first if they're going to join the Marines or the military in general. But I don't recommend it for everybody. It has to be something you're passionate about. It's literally you signing your name saying, I'm willing to die for my country. And it could be something as dumb as my friend getting run over while he's sleeping. It could be driving over a bomb. It could be I've been in helicopter crashes where I'm just flying from here to there, and you see all these military plane crashes in the last 6 months. Our equipment is 20, 30 years old. It's being maintained by another 17-year-old kid who doesn't know what he's doing. I've had planes crash out of the sky. I've crashed in the ocean. I've drowned. I've been revived. I've been dead twice because of our crappy military equipment. So even if you think I'm just working on making food, you could die very easy by military accident. I've shot at more of my own guys than I have the enemy probably in action, because we're running around everywhere and we're just so focused on what we're doing, and another unit comes out of nowhere like a bunch of idiots and I shoot them on accident. So it's not a very safe job. So it's not the recruiting poster most people are looking for.
Yeah, thought not.